I'm Whitney Stewart, and I'm from New England. I was born in Boston and educated up north. And professionally, I'm a children's book writer. I've been writing books for children and articles for children for 30 years, almost 30 years. And I have a background in mindfulness practice. It started when I was in high school. I had an injury which led me to a yoga class back in the 70s, which led me to learn to meditate. And I discovered that meditation and yoga and mindfulness practice didn't just help me with my injury and dealing with that, but it really helped me with things that I didn't even know that I needed help with. For example, I came from a very complicated childhood background, family, and learning mindfulness was a way for me to break away or separate or work with the pain of my childhood, understand it a little bit better, understand the other people in my family better, and understand how I could go forward in a healthier way with my own life. That interest in that class when I was in 10th grade led me on travels. I ended up in Tibet in my 20s, and from there I went to India, and I lived and spent a lot of time working with Tibetan Buddhist monks who taught me mindfulness and meditation in the Tibetan Buddhist system. So my background, really, I started in the late 1986, really understanding mindfulness from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective. I already had learned it from this yoga perspective, very Americanized yoga perspective. And I've been practicing meditation ever since. And now I hope to learn how to bring that mindfulness practice to creative students, to the performing artist. When I was in high school and college, I was an actor, and I had terrible stage fright. Acting was my life, as was writing, but acting, then I thought I really wanted to be an actor. I would be so afraid before I got on stage that I would vomit, often, performance after performance after performance. I would be tight and my breath would be shallow, therefore my voice wouldn't project. So I was glad to have that early mindfulness practice, which I didn't know was going to actually help me on stage, but it really did. Absolutely not. In fact, and the way I plan to teach it is not attached to any religion. So it's a non-denominational way. Mindfulness is the cultivation of present moment awareness that is non-judgmental, non-reactive, and the cultivation of understanding basic goodness, your own basic goodness, and feeling present with that, feeling present in your body, in your space, in the room. This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with being here now, in the moment, and hearing as opposed to listening. When we listen, we add a lot of judgment. We add a lot of our own mental dialogue to what is actually taking place. We do the same when we look versus seeing as well. So what I hope to teach is the awareness of present moment, and not attach that to any sense of, specific sense of religious values. So it's really about understanding basic human goodness, your own basic human goodness and that of others, and working with that and going out into the world and starting there with a fuller awareness of what is happening around you and being grounded in your sense of I am here on this earth, this person is here on this earth, and what is happening without a lot of the judgment and reactivity that most of us, all of us, partake in every day in our lives. And it's a practice. It's not something we are raised, as soon as we are born, we are raised in a set of reactivity. So it's looking to understand how we react to sound and sight and whatever happens to us in our daily life, and how we're reacting, and can we modulate that reaction? Can we not react? Can we just observe more fully? First, we're going to work on ourself and understanding our own emotions, understanding the triggers, what triggers us into those emotions, learning how to increase the gap between the trigger and the emotional response, learning to develop responses as opposed to reactions to those triggers. Then, one thing that benefits mindfulness practice and benefits all of us as humans is not only understanding how we work, but how we are in a community and how others work. We can't control the behaviors of others, but we can control our responses to the behaviors of others. We are, human animals that live in a community. So therefore, I plan to not just work with ourselves and how we are and stay insular, but then find out how do we react in our communities? How can we work on nonviolent communication? And by nonviolent, I mean communication that is that involves active listening, that involves compassion for the other person, that involves awareness of the mind, body, and speech of the other person, and awareness of our own mind, body, and speech in response to that other person or a group of people. So it's not just working well on ourselves alone, but working on ourselves within a community, and developing compassion for others, compassion for self and compassion for others, so that we will go out and become more healthful, grounded, mindful, compassionate community members. It's a practice. It's hard to say whether it's hard or easy, because it depends on whether it's I'm answering the question, you're answering the question, and I could answer the question differently at any moment on a different day. So if I'm having a good day and I feel grounded and within myself and present and non-reactive and calm, I might say, oh, it's easy. And the next day I might, if I'm having a horrible day and I'm reacting to everything and I'm tripping and I'm using harsh language and I'm not listening to somebody and I'm acting out and I'm not paying attention to my own body and my own needs, then I would say it was really hard. So it really depends on your view, my view, the moment. And it's never the same. It's always changing, as is life, as is every moment. One moment is always shifting. And that's what's interesting in mindfulness practice is, let's just say, for example, I walk into a moment and I am suffering deep physical pain for whatever reason. I can use the skills that I've learned in mindfulness practice to sit with that pain and get curious about that pain, instead of reacting to that pain and say, oh, I hate this pain, and oh, why did I get this pain, and oh, I shouldn't have hurt myself, and if I hadn't hurt myself, and oh, this pain's going to stop me from performing properly, or this is going to stop me from being kind to somebody. There's all this mental dialogue going on about the pain that has nothing to do with the pain itself. But if we can sit with that pain and get curious about that pain and observe it and notice it, we often discover that we can put a little space between that pain and our mind. And in that space is the relaxation, which sometimes will allow that pain to soften or shift. Occasionally that pain will vanish, not always, of course. And that shouldn't be the goal of mindfulness practice, to make the pain go away, because it's not about that. It's really about observing and getting curious about pain. And we can do this with physical pain, and we can do this with emotional pain. And we can do this with all different kinds of feelings. This class will be working on looking at our emotions, looking at the triggers for those emotions, identifying the trigger, the gap between the trigger and the emotional response, and seeing if we can get curious about that process and put space within that process and just observe it and notice it. And then learning to not react and to shift our state, our mental state, to a happier, more positive mental state. The role of breathing is very important because it's one of our basic human functions. So to be able to go and work with the breath is something that anyone can do. You don't need a book to do it. You don't need any kind of certain background. You don't need to wear a certain kind of clothing. You can be anywhere. But if you use the breath, it is the simplest and most basic tool for mindfulness practice. I can sit in this chair and I can learn to slow down my breathing. I can shift where the breath goes in, whether it goes in through my nose or goes in through my mouth, whether it goes in through a tight clenched jaw or a relaxed mouth, whether it goes into my chest, whether it goes into my belly, how it comes in, the timing of it. So I can use counting my breath as a mindfulness practice. I can use deep belly breaths, noticing where it goes in my body, noticing how the breath can soften muscles. This is a very basic and useful tool for mindfulness practice. You practice it in a lot of different ways, but I will be teaching breathing techniques to use. I will be teaching specific relaxation techniques. Some will involve sitting and learning mindfulness posture, and certain breathing techniques. We'll try a lot of different ones. There's also ways of learning walking meditation, walking mindfulness practice. There's also ways of practicing relaxation lying down. Then there are also ways to practice moment. You don't have to be sitting in a special room or walking in a special way. You can practice mindfulness every day when you're brushing your teeth. You can practice it eating. Eating is a great time to practice mindful eating, to slow down. Many of us we're all busy in our day and we've got all these emotional feelings, or we're watching television and we're just eating and we're not noticing how much we're eating. And pretty soon we've just eaten a whole bag of potato chips, or we've, stuffed ourselves to the point where, we feel sick. Or we haven't eaten enough, or we haven't eaten the right foods. We haven't made good choices for ourselves, for our health. Mindful eating and mindful practice in general will slow us down to the point where we're saying, oh, wow, I'm not hungry anymore. Or I really am hungry and I didn't eat enough. Or I was talking so much that I didn't pay attention to what I was eating. Oh, there's a real flavor in that food that I just ate. Most of us don't taste the food we're eating. Not really. We just gobble it down. I do have a discipline to it, but my discipline shifts depending on whether I'm traveling or what my situation is. But normally I particularly like to practice in the morning before my head jumps to my phone or my iPad or my laptop, or I start conversations. So I like to practice first thing in the morning, and sometimes I will wake up and just sit up in bed, sit in proper position right in my bed right there before I even get up, and practice mindfulness practice. Or I'll go and brush my teeth and come back and get into bed and do it. Or I'll sit on a rug or on my cushions and I'll do it there. But I don't beat myself up if I don't practice right then. Something might happen where I have to early morning appointment, or I'm going to catch a flight. Then, let's say I'm catching a flight, then I will get on an airplane, and once I'm all settled in and we've taken off, then I will practice mindfulness right there. If I'm in a grocery line, that's a great time for me, because I have always had a sense of impatience. This is one of the things that I've had to work on since I was little. So grocery lines are perfect for that. Instead of getting angry or annoyed, practice mindfulness, practice deep breathing. Or if I am getting angry and annoyed, let's say there's a very slow checkout cashier, or there's a very slow person in front of me, and my natural instinct would be, my tendency would be, just hurry up. Then I can look at myself and laugh. Oh, there it is again, my impatience. And right at that moment, I can sit there and do a breathing technique, and I can soften my muscles, and I can really get to a place of laughing at that persistent impatience that I've had all my life. And then turn it into a tool for mindfulness. Instead of it being a negative, it can be a tool for a positive. So that's another way. I can practice mindfulness, and I hope to teach others to practice mindfulness during a conversation. Really listening. How do I listen? Do I listen and go, yeah, and I'm not really listening? Or do I listen and do I listen and add a lot of judgments? Oh, this person is, shouldn't be this and shouldn't be that, or should be this, or should be that. Or do I really listen to what somebody else is telling me with an open heart and an open mind and an open sense without any expectation for that other person? And do I respond in a helpful, grounded, open, compassionate manner? It can help in the preparation for the performing artist first. The performing artist will often go into a situation, again, with a lot of fear or anticipation. With those emotions, which are often destructive, not always, but often destructive, the performing artist will often create a whole set of expectations and assumptions that will distract him or her from the performance itself. Therefore, if both in preparation and in just before the performance, if an artist practices mindfulness, they'll be able to allow some space between the mental dialogue, the assumptions, and what is actually happening in the moment. So for example, let's say I'm a performing artist and I'm going to go out and I'm going to play my instrument. If I'm tight, if my breathing is shallow, if I play a wind instrument, or if I'm a singer, I think singers probably know this, that they're going to constrict their vocal cords, for example. They're going to make their breathing more shallow. They won't be able to get that sound, I think, that they're trying to achieve. If the artist can learn to relax, to soften the muscles, to slow down the breathing, to allow some space between an emotion that they're having and the present moment, it'll allow them to go into that performance with a much more relaxed body and sense of groundedness, which I believe will help that performance, will calm them down. They won't be reacting to their fear. They won't be tightening up. That's one way. And you cannot just practice this right before a performance, because this really is just like one would spend daily practice of the violin or in singing or doing your vocal runs. This is something that needs to be practiced on a daily basis. Therefore, I would recommend for all my students, and I do this myself, is practicing mindfulness every day. It's not something that we can just do once in a while, because it really is, it's a muscle. It's a emotional muscle that needs to be developed.